that we have to stop talking about the peace process, and start talking more concretely about the two-state solution process.
Now, let's get some more analysis on this proposed peace plan with Dr. Sahar Khamis. She's a fellow with the Middle East Council on Global Affairs and joining us from Washington, D.C. Doctor, good to have you on this news hour. This roadmap that's been proposed by the EU's foreign policy chief, is it different to anything that we've seen in the past?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm afraid that it is more symbolic than realistic. The 10 points that have been seen by news organizations like Euronews and Reuters seems very ambitious, and it tries to bring about some kind of quote-unquote comprehensive, lasting Middle East peace. But believe me, these very same words, a lasting, comprehensive, just peace in the Middle East and an end to the conflict and hostilities between Palestine and Israel, is something I have been hearing since my early childhood. And up till now, unfortunately, we are only seeing more hostility and more war. We're now seeing this devastating war on Gaza, which has claimed more than 30,000 lives so far, many of whom are women, children, and elderly people, and even infants. So I think that without the buy-in directly from the two involved parties, i.e. Israel, and in this case, the Palestinians also, it is very difficult to imagine any kind of a peaceful solution. And I think that step number one that should be talked about before talking about any future roadmap is an end to the ongoing horrible war on Gaza and this horrible humanitarian crisis that we are witnessing day in and day out. A ceasefire, an immediate, comprehensive, total ceasefire is what the EU and any other humanitarian organization, any other international organization should be working on at the moment. And up till this moment, we do not see this complete ceasefire coming into effect. Even what the US called before as tactical pauses or strategic pauses and temporary ceasefires, all of these have fallen, and mainly because of Netanyahu's stubborn stance, and he insists on escalation and the continuation of this war until what he describes as quote-unquote victory, which in his own definition is the complete destruction of Hamas, without seeing any kind of necessity for even a two-state solution. And as long as he, continues to really be stubborn in that particular aspect and insists on the rejection of a two-state solution, the rejection of Palestinian sovereignty, I don't think that any kind of roadmap or peace plan can really be effective or can really work.
Doctor, is a two-state solution still viable at this stage? There are those who have proposed a one-state solution, but as you say, until there is an end to this war, complete ceasefire in Gaza, should we even be looking ahead to something like that?
I mean, step number one should be the ceasefire. There is no question about it. And that's where all the efforts and all the, work and effort should be directed. That is step number one. We cannot even talk about the post-war Gaza without ending the, the bleeding and the loss of human lives and the humanitarian crisis that's unfolding in Gaza every single minute. We are seeing that every single minute with our own eyes. So that is step number one, the end of hostilities and the end of this fighting and bringing about a ceasefire. Then when you look at the next step, which is basically what is going to happen after that, what is going to be the reality for post-war Gaza, then we have to talk about what are the scenarios that are acceptable by both the Palestinians and the Israelis. And at this moment, I think the gap between both sides cannot be bigger and cannot be wider. We are seeing a very radical, very right-wing, extremist Israeli government that is even rejecting what the United States has proposed as a demilitarized Palestinian state. Even this very low margin of expectations, a very simple, state without military power, without an army, even that has been rejected by Netanyahu's government, which is insisting on a represence of Israeli forces in Gaza in the post-war phase with Israeli security presence in Gaza, which is not something that I think the Palestinians would ever accept. And therefore, these differences are becoming wider and bigger. And with that, we cannot really even talk about what the EU is proposing at the moment, unfortunately. When you talk about a roadmap, thinking about the future, these are very radical, fundamental hurdles and impediments that have to be addressed first before talking about the future roadmap, let alone the differences within the EU itself. Even within the EU itself, not all the countries share the same vision on this particular conflict. You have Germany, which is more leaning towards Israel. You have Spain and Ireland, which are taking more pro-Palestinian stances. Even within the EU itself, there are some differences and discrepancies. So with all of that said, I think that this is more of a symbolic plan that tries to say the EU is trying to play a role on the international arena. It is there and it's trying to move forward the peace process. But in terms of how applicable or how realistic that is, I'm afraid that the answer is it is not realistic and it's not applicable for all the previously mentioned reasons, unfortunately.
Symbolic but not realistic. Dr. Sahar Khamis, really appreciate your analysis. Speaking to us there from the US.